The most feared heir at Blackthorn Academy was staring directly at me, and I had absolutely no idea why. My name is Ethan Carter, and people like me don't become the center of attention at places like this. Blackthorn Academy sat on nearly 200 acres of perfectly manicured grounds just outside Boston, a school built for the children of CEOs, politicians, and old money families whose last names seem to appear on every building in the city. I was here because of a scholarship, a full ride, the kind that changed lives. The kind that came with a silent warning attached to it. Don't mess this up. Every morning, I reminded myself why I was here. Keep your grades up. Stay invisible. Graduate. Get a job. Help mom pay off the bills. Simple. At least, it had been simple until Ronan Kingsley looked at me. Everyone knew Ronan. Even before I arrived, I knew his name. You couldn't spend 5 minutes on campus without hearing whispers about him. The heir to Kingsley Global. Future billionaire. Captain of nothing because he didn't need titles. He had something stronger. Influence. The kind that made professors nervous and students move out of his way before he even reached the hallway. Nobody knew whether the stories about him were true, but nobody was brave enough to test them either. During orientation, I caught him watching me from across the auditorium. I told myself it was coincidence. During lunch, I looked up and found him sitting at a table surrounded by people who looked like they belonged on magazine covers. He was looking at me again. Not smiling, not frowning, just watching. The attention made my stomach tighten. By the end of my first month, I had developed a system. Keep my head down. Avoid drama. Never get involved with the elite circles that ruled the campus. The system worked until the housing office sent me an email at 6:30 on a Thursday morning. I read it 3 times before I believed it. Due to administrative restructuring, my dorm assignment had been changed effective immediately. I stared at the screen while brushing my teeth in the communal bathroom. Administrative restructuring? What did that even mean? My previous dorm was old, crowded, and filled with students like me. Scholarship students, work-study students, kids who counted every dollar. The new assignment listed a residence hall I had only seen from a distance. Kingsley House, the VIP residence. The place where wealthy families donated enough money to get their children private suites and breathtaking views of the campus lake. There had to be a mistake. There wasn't. By noon, my key card had been deactivated. By 3 o'clock, I was dragging 2 suitcases across campus while dozens of students stared openly. One guy actually stopped walking just to look at me. No way, he muttered. How did he get into Kingsley House? I wished I knew. The building looked more like a luxury hotel than a dorm. Polished marble floors, massive windows, quiet hallways that smelled faintly of cedar and expensive cleaning products. I felt underdressed just standing inside. The woman at the front desk handed me my new key card and gave me a strange look. Room 407, she said. Good luck. Good luck? Why would I need luck? 10 minutes later, I found out. I stepped off the elevator and looked at the room numbers. 401, 403, 405. Then I saw 407. And directly across the hallway, only a few feet away, was room 408. A black plaque beside the door displayed a single name. Kingsley. My heart nearly stopped. Ronan Kingsley lived right across from me. I laughed nervously to myself because surely this was some ridiculous coincidence. The universe couldn't possibly have such terrible timing. I unlocked my door, dragged my luggage inside, and spent the next few hours unpacking while trying not to think about it. By midnight, exhaustion finally won. I fell asleep telling myself everything would be fine. Nobody cared about a scholarship student. Nobody cared about me. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my face. I stretched, yawned, and rolled onto my side. Then I froze. Someone was sitting in the chair beside my desk. Calm, silent, watching me. Ronan Kingsley. Ethan forgot how to breathe. For a long second, he genuinely wondered if he was still dreaming. Ronan Kingsley sat in the chair beside the desk as if he belonged there, one arm resting casually on the armrest. A hardcover book closed in his hand. Morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows behind him, turning the edges of his dark hair gold. He looked completely relaxed. Ethan, meanwhile, nearly rolled off the bed. How did you get in here? He blurted. Ronan glanced toward the door. You left it unlocked. Ethan immediately looked at the lock. Sure enough, it was still open. Fantastic. Less than 24 hours in the most intimidating dorm on campus, and he had already forgotten basic survival skills. You came into my room because my door was unlocked. Ethan asked. Ronan considered that. I knocked first. Somehow that did not make the situation less strange. Ethan pushed himself upright and tried to ignore the fact that he had probably just woken up looking like he had lost a fight with his blankets. Why are you here? Ronan stood smoothly. Because people are already talking. Ethan frowned. Talking about what? You. That single word landed like a dropped weight. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. Of course they were talking. Students at Blackthorn Academy treated gossip like an Olympic sport. Because I moved into Kingsley House? He asked. Because you moved next to me. Ronan walked toward the door. Get dressed. We should leave together. Ethan stared. We should what? Leave together. Why? Ronan opened the door and looked back at him. Because if we do not, things will become much harder for you. Then he left. Ethan spent the next 10 minutes standing in the middle of his room trying to decide whether he had imagined the entire conversation. Unfortunately, when he stepped into the hallway, Ronan was still there waiting. Several students immediately stopped talking when they saw them together. One girl nearly dropped her phone. Ethan suddenly understood exactly what Ronan had meant. The rumors had already started. By lunchtime, they had spread across campus. Ethan discovered this when he walked into the student center and noticed conversations stopping around him. Phones appeared. Whispers followed him through the room. One message board post claimed he was secretly related to the Kingsley family. Another claimed he had blackmailed Ronan. Someone else suggested he was dating him. That last theory made Ethan nearly choke on his soda. This is insane, he muttered. It will calm down eventually, said a voice behind him. Ethan turned and found Ronan carrying 2 coffees. Without asking, Ronan placed one on the table in front of him. Ethan stared at it. You bought me coffee? You look tired. People are already convinced something weird is happening. Something weird is happening. Ronan sat across from him. A scholarship student was moved into Kingsley House without explanation. Ethan hated that he had a point. Do you know why they moved me? He asked. For the first time, Ronan hesitated. It lasted less than a second, but Ethan noticed. Not yet, Ronan said. Not yet. The answer felt carefully chosen. Before Ethan could ask more, a group of students entered the student center. The loudest among them was a blond guy Ethan recognized from one of his economics classes. Trevor Whitmore. Wealthy. Popular. Loud enough for 3 people. Trevor spotted Ethan immediately. Then he noticed Ronan sitting across from him. Surprise flashed across his face before transforming into a smile that looked entirely fake. Well, this is interesting, Trevor said. Several of his friends laughed. Ethan looked away. He had dealt with people like Trevor before. They enjoyed making others uncomfortable. I heard the scholarship kid hit the jackpot, Trevor continued. Private housing. Personal attention from Kingsley. Must be nice. Ethan kept his expression neutral. I just got reassigned. Sure. Trevor smiled wider. Funny how opportunities always seem to find certain people. The implication hung in the air. Around them, conversation slowed. People were listening. Waiting. Ethan felt heat creep into his face. This was exactly the kind of attention he hated. Trevor took another step forward. Maybe you can tell the rest of us how you pulled it off. Before Ethan could respond, a calm voice cut through the tension. Walk away, Trevor. The entire room went quiet. Ronan had not raised his voice. He did not need to. Trevor's smile faltered instantly. I was just talking. Then you are finished. Ronan's tone remained perfectly even. Trevor looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he backed away. His friends followed immediately. Within seconds they were gone. Ethan sat frozen. Across the room, students were openly staring. Ronan picked up his coffee as though nothing unusual had happened. You see, he said. This is exactly why we should stay close for now. Ethan blinked. Stay close. Until we figure out who moved you here. A strange feeling settled in Ethan's chest. The situation should have terrified him. Maybe part of it did. But another part could not ignore what had just happened. For the second time, Ronan Kingsley had stepped in front of a problem before it could reach him. And somehow that was even more dangerous. Because for the first time since arriving at Blackthorn Academy, Ethan was beginning to wonder if the most feared person on campus might actually be protecting him. Ethan spent the rest of the afternoon trying to convince himself that Ronan Kingsley was not becoming a problem. Unfortunately, every piece of evidence suggested otherwise. By the next morning, half the campus seemed convinced they were somehow connected. Ethan discovered this when he walked into his statistics lecture and found 2 students abruptly lowering their voices the moment he entered. One of them glanced toward his phone screen before quickly turning it over. Ethan did not need to see it to know what was there. Rumors traveled through Blackthorn Academy faster than wildfire. He took his usual seat near the back and opened his laptop. For exactly 3 peaceful minutes, Everything felt normal. Then someone sat beside him. Ethan looked up. Ronan. Of course. The entire classroom seemed to stop breathing. Ethan stared. Ronan stared back. What are you doing? Ethan whispered. Attending class. You have never attended this section. I do now. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Across the room, several students were already typing furiously on their phones. Great. Another headline for the rumor mill. When class ended, Ethan packed his bag as quickly as possible. This is making things worse, he said as they stepped into the hallway. It is making things safer. Safer from what? Ronan glanced around before lowering his voice. Someone wanted you moved into Kingsley House. Ethan frowned. You keep saying that. Because it matters. Ronan stopped walking. Administrative mistakes do not happen at this school. The certainty in his voice made Ethan pause. You really think somebody arranged it? I know they did. Before Ethan could ask more, a black SUV rolled quietly to the curb outside the academic building. The vehicle looked expensive enough to buy a house. A suited driver stepped out immediately. Students nearby pretended not to stare. They failed miserably. You're right. Ethan asked. Ronan nodded. Come with me. Ethan laughed. Absolutely not. Why? Because getting into a luxury SUV with the most famous person on campus is the opposite of keeping a low profile. For the first time, something that looked suspiciously like amusement touched Ronan's expression. Fair point. Then his phone vibrated. The amusement vanished instantly. Ethan caught a glimpse of the screen before Ronan lowered it. The message contained only 6 words. Keep him close until confirmed. Ethan blinked. What was that? Nothing important. That looked important. It was not. The answer arrived too quickly. Ronan slipped the phone into his pocket. Ethan noticed something else at the same moment. A silver ring on Ronan's right hand. He had never seen it before. The design was elegant but unusual, marked with a crest that looked centuries old. Nice ring, Ethan said casually. Ronan's gaze dropped to his hand. For the first time since they met, genuine surprise crossed his face. Then he turned the ring inward, hiding the crest. Family thing, he said. Family thing. Another answer that revealed absolutely nothing. Later that evening, Ethan headed toward the library. Midterms were approaching, and unlike most students at Blackthorn, he could not afford mediocre grades. Scholarship requirements did not care about social drama. The library was quiet except for the soft hum of air conditioning and the occasional turning page. Ethan settled into a study table near the windows overlooking the lake. Sunset painted the water gold. For nearly an hour, he managed to focus. Then someone dropped into the chair across from him. He did not even need to look up anymore. Do you ever stop appearing? Ethan asked. Ronan opened a textbook. Not recently. People are going to think we planned this. Maybe we should. Ethan froze. Ronan continued reading as though he had not just said something completely ridiculous. What? Ethan asked. A temporary arrangement. That sounds suspicious already. People are watching you because of me. Ronan finally looked up. His eyes were steady, calm, impossible to read. If we give them a story, they stop looking for a different one. Ethan stared at him. You want us to pretend we are friends. Something like that. That is your solution? It is the simplest one. Ethan wanted to reject the idea immediately. Instead, he found himself noticing the seriousness behind Ronan's expression. The absence of mockery. The strange sense that Ronan was trying to solve a problem Ethan could not even see yet. Before he could answer, movement outside the library windows caught his attention. 2 men stood beside the path near the lake. Both wore dark suits. Both were looking directly toward the building. Toward him. Ethan frowned. Do you know them? Ronan followed his gaze. His expression hardened instantly. No, the answer sounded false. The suited men turned and walked away moments later. Silence stretched between them. Then Ronan closed his textbook. Do not walk back to the dorm alone tonight. Ethan's pulse quickened. Why? Ronan stood. Because I think somebody is finally getting impatient. Ethan barely slept that night. Ronan's warning replayed in his head long after the lights of Kingsley House had gone dark. Somebody is finally getting impatient. The words followed him into the next morning like a shadow. By breakfast, things became worse. The moment he entered the dining hall, conversations stopped. Not all of them. Just enough. Enough to notice. Enough to make his stomach sink. Students glanced at him, then at their phones, then back at him again. Ethan pulled out his own phone and immediately understood why. A photo had gone viral across campus overnight. It showed him sitting across from Ronan in the library. Another showed them leaving the academic building together. A third captured Ronan standing beside him outside Kingsley House. The caption underneath read, "Scholarship student climbs the social ladder through Kingsley connection." Ethan felt his face burn. Hundreds of comments filled the post. Some accused him of manipulating Ronan. Others claimed he had secretly arranged his transfer into Kingsley House. A few insisted he was using Ronan's reputation to gain influence. None of it was true. Unfortunately, truth rarely mattered once gossip took over. Ethan considered leaving before anyone noticed him. Then he saw Trevor Whitmore standing near the center of the room. Trevor smiled the moment their eyes met. It was the smile of someone who had gotten exactly what he wanted. Throughout the day, the whispers only grew louder. In class, students who normally ignored him suddenly paid attention. In the hallway, conversations stopped as he walked past. Even his lab partner seemed uncomfortable. By afternoon, Ethan felt exhausted. He headed toward the student union, hoping for 15 minutes of peace before his next lecture. Instead, he found a crowd. A large digital display near the entrance flashed announcements for upcoming campus events. Someone had hacked the public message board. Across the giant screen appeared a slideshow of photos featuring Ethan. Library pictures, dorm pictures, classroom pictures. Every image carefully framed to suggest a connection with Ronan. At the bottom, a single sentence scrolled endlessly. How much did he pay to get this close? Laughter rippled through the crowd. Ethan stopped walking. For one terrible moment, he could not move at all. Embarrassment crawled through him like ice water. He had worked harder than anyone to earn his place here. Late nights, extra jobs, endless studying. Now strangers looked at him as though he were some kind of fraud. Trevor stepped forward from the crowd. "Looks like everybody is asking the same question," he said loudly. "Funny how opportunities keep appearing for certain people." Several students shifted awkwardly. Others watched with open curiosity. Nobody defended Ethan. Nobody wanted to become part of the story. Ethan tightened his grip on his backpack strap. "I earned my scholarship," he said. Trevor shrugged. "Maybe. But people are wondering if that is the only thing you earned." A few nervous laughs followed. Ethan looked away. He hated this. He hated being the center of attention. He hated how helpless he suddenly felt. Then the room changed. The noise faded first. Conversations died. Heads turned. A path opened through the crowd without anyone being asked. Ronan Kingsley had arrived. He walked forward calmly, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Nobody spoke. Even Trevor's confidence seemed to weaken. Ronan stopped beside Ethan. Not in front of him. Beside him. The distinction mattered. It felt deliberate. "Interesting display," Ronan said quietly. Trevor forced a smile. "Just campus humor." Ronan looked toward the giant screen. Humor is usually funny. Silence. Absolute silence. Ronan reached into his pocket and handed a small flash drive to one of the student union administrators standing nearby. "You may want to review the security footage from last night." The administrator looked confused. "Why?" "Because the person responsible for this used a campus terminal at 11:43 p.m. Ronan's gaze shifted calmly toward Trevor. "The camera angle is very clear." Trevor's face lost color instantly. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Ethan blinked. Ronan had evidence. Somehow, he had already investigated the situation before even arriving. The administrator hurried away. Trevor opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "This proves nothing." "Then you have nothing to worry about," Ronan replied. His tone never changed. No anger, no threats, just certainty. Somehow that was worse. Students began looking at Trevor differently now. Doubt replaced amusement. Within seconds, the momentum shifted completely. The crowd that had been watching Ethan now watched Trevor instead. Ronan turned away as though the matter was already finished. Then he looked at Ethan. "You have class in 10 minutes. Ethan stared at him. "You knew? About the screen?" "About all of it." Ronan's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I suspected." For a brief moment, neither of them moved. The noise around them seemed distant. Ethan realized something uncomfortable then. Ronan had not protected his reputation. He had protected Ethan's. The thought settled somewhere deep in his chest. Warm, dangerous, real. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Ethan noticed something else. Across the room, near one of the exits, stood one of the suited men he had seen outside the library. The man was watching them. Watching Ronan. Watching him. The moment their eyes met, the stranger slipped out the door. Ethan's pulse quickened. When he turned back, Ronan was already staring toward the same exit. And for the first time since they met, Ronan looked genuinely worried. The worried look vanished from Ronan's face almost as quickly as it appeared, but Ethan had seen it. That alone was enough to keep him awake most of the night. Ronan Kingsley did not seem like the kind of person who worried about anything. Yet the sight of that suited stranger had clearly affected him. The next few days passed under a strange tension. The rumors on campus quieted after Trevor was forced to publicly apologize for the hacked display, but something else replaced them. Curiosity. Students no longer whispered that Ethan was manipulating Ronan. Instead, they wanted to know why Ronan seemed determined to stay close to him. Ethan wanted the same answer. Unfortunately, every time he asked, Ronan changed the subject. On Friday afternoon, Ethan returned to Kingsley House after a long economics seminar. As he stepped off the elevator, he heard voices coming from the hallway. One belonged to Ronan. The other belonged to a man Ethan had never heard before. He was older, sharp, controlled. "The board is losing patience," the man said. Ethan froze before rounding the corner. "I do not care," Ronan replied. "You should." "I said I do not." The conversation stopped. Ethan immediately stepped back before he could be noticed. A minute later, the elevator doors opened again. A tall man in an expensive suit walked inside and disappeared without looking in Ethan's direction. Ethan waited another 30 seconds before heading toward his room. Ronan was standing, alone near the window at the end of the hall. The late afternoon sun painted gold across the glass. "Who was that?" Ethan asked. Ronan looked over. "Nobody important." Ethan laughed softly. "You have a habit of saying that whenever something is obviously important." For a moment, Ronan almost smiled. Almost. Then his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his expression immediately hardened. "I have to go." "Go where?" "Family business." Ethan watched him walk away. Family business. Another answer that explained nothing. Later that evening, Ethan decided he had spent enough time being confused. He headed to the library intending to focus on studying instead of Ronan Kingsley. That plan lasted exactly 20 minutes. A notification appeared on his laptop screen. Someone had emailed him anonymously. No subject line. No message. Just an attachment. Ethan hesitated before opening it. The file contained photographs. Dozens of them. Newspaper articles. Corporate reports. Magazine covers. Every single one featured Ronan. Ethan frowned. He already knew Ronan came from a powerful family. Everyone did. Then he opened the final document. His pulse stopped. It was a business profile from a financial publication. At the top appeared a photograph of Ronan wearing the same silver family ring Ethan had noticed days earlier. Underneath was a headline. Heir apparent to the Kingsley Consortium. Future chief executive officer of a global empire valued at over $40 billion. Ethan stared. 40 billion. His eyes moved lower. The article described private security teams, international holdings, corporate succession plans, board members, political connections. The Kingsley family was not merely wealthy. They were powerful on a scale Ethan had never imagined. Suddenly, dozens of strange details made sense. The SUV, the suited men, the mysterious messages, the constant attention. The article continued. One paragraph caught Ethan's eye immediately. Ronan Kingsley has reportedly delayed formal succession despite increasing pressure from the board to assume leadership responsibilities following recent internal disputes. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Leadership responsibilities. Internal disputes. This was not a normal college student. This was someone preparing to inherit an empire. Someone who had known exactly how much power he possessed while pretending to be just another student. Another attachment waited below. Ethan opened it. His stomach dropped. It was a photograph taken 3 weeks earlier, the day before his dorm transfer. The image showed Ronan standing inside an administrative office alongside several senior university officials. A date stamp glowed in the corner. The exact week Ethan had been reassigned to Kingsley House. Suddenly, Ethan understood. The transfer, the protection, the constant appearances. None of it had been coincidence. His chest tightened. He felt foolish. Foolish for believing Ronan had simply been helping him. Foolish for trusting him. The next morning, Ethan confronted him. Ronan opened his apartment door and immediately knew something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked. Ethan held up the printed article. "You tell me." Ronan's eyes moved across the page. Silence followed. Heavy silence. "Where did you get this?" Ronan asked quietly. "So it is true." Ronan did not answer. That answer was enough. "You knew about my transfer," Ethan continued. "You knew somebody arranged it. You knew far more than you ever admitted." "Ethan, how long were you planning to keep lying?" The hurt in his own voice surprised him. Ronan looked genuinely troubled. "I was trying to protect you." Ethan shook his head. "That is not protection. That is manipulation. The words landed between them like broken glass. For the first time since they met, Ronan had no response. Ethan stepped backward. I do not know what this is anymore. Then he turned and walked away. Behind him, Ronan remained standing in the doorway, silent, watching, and neither of them noticed the suited stranger observing from the far end of the hallway, quietly sending a message that contained only 4 words. Separation confirmed. Proceed immediately. For 3 days, Ethan avoided Ronan completely. He changed his study schedule, took different routes between classes, and left the dorm early enough to avoid running into him in the hallway. At first, it felt satisfying. If Ronan wanted secrets, he could keep them to himself. If he wanted distance, Ethan could provide that too. The problem was that anger became much harder to maintain when exhaustion started creeping in. Midterms arrived like a storm. Ethan spent hours in the library, surviving on coffee and determination. By Thursday evening, a cold rain had settled over campus. The kind that turned sidewalks silver and painted every window with streaks of water. Ethan left the library shortly after 10 o'clock, carrying a backpack full of notes and a headache that felt like a marching band behind his eyes. The campus was nearly empty. Most students had already returned to their dorms. Rain tapped against his jacket as he crossed the quad. Halfway home, dizziness hit him unexpectedly. Ethan stopped walking. The world tilted slightly. He closed his eyes and took a slow breath. Too much coffee. Not enough sleep. Nothing serious. He started moving again. Then a black umbrella appeared above his head. Ethan froze. He already knew who it was before turning around. Ronan stood beside him, one hand holding the umbrella against the rain. Neither of them spoke at first. The silence felt heavier than any argument. You look terrible, Ronan finally said. Ethan laughed despite himself. Nice to see you too. When was the last time you slept? I am not answering that. Ronan studied him for a moment. That bad then. Ethan should have walked away. Instead, he found himself standing there beneath the umbrella while rain drummed softly around them. The warmth of Ronan's presence felt strangely familiar. Dangerous, but familiar. Why are you here? Ethan asked quietly. Ronan looked out across the rain-soaked campus. Because I knew you would leave the library around this time. Ethan stared. You have been keeping track? Yes. The honesty caught him off guard. No excuses. No clever explanation. Just the truth. They resumed walking, side by side, neither mentioning the argument that still hung between them. When they reached Kingsley House, Ethan expected Ronan to leave. Instead, Ronan followed him to his floor. You should rest, Ronan said. That sounds suspiciously like advice. It is. Ethan unlocked his door. Before stepping inside, he glanced back. Why did you never tell me the truth? The question escaped before he could stop it. Ronan's expression changed. The carefully controlled mask slipped just enough to reveal something underneath. Something tired. Because everyone who learns who I really am starts seeing me differently. Ethan said nothing. Ronan continued quietly. The board sees a future chief executive officer. Investors see money. Reporters see headlines. My family sees responsibility. He looked away briefly. Very few people see me. The hallway fell silent. Ethan had never heard Ronan speak that way before. Without confidence. Without control. Just honest. You could have trusted me, Ethan said. Ronan laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. Trust is complicated in my world. For a moment, neither moved. Rain tapped gently against the windows at the end of the corridor. Somewhere downstairs, an elevator chimed. Ordinary sounds. Ordinary moments. Yet everything felt different. When I was 12, Ronan said suddenly, my father told me that someday I would inherit the company whether I wanted it or not. Ethan listened quietly. Every decision since then has belonged to somebody else. Ronan's voice remained calm, but Ethan heard the loneliness underneath it. Where I study, who I meet, which events I attend, even which friendships are considered acceptable. Ethan's chest tightened unexpectedly. He had spent weeks assuming Ronan controlled everything around him. Now he realized the opposite might be true. That sounds miserable, Ethan said. A faint smile appeared. It is not always great. Their eyes met. Something shifted. Small, subtle, real. The distance between them suddenly felt far more emotional than physical. Then Ronan's phone vibrated. He checked the screen. Whatever he saw immediately erased the softness from his expression. What is it? Ethan asked. Ronan hesitated. Nothing. That means it is definitely something. Ronan slipped the phone back into his pocket. Go get some sleep, Ethan. This time, Ethan noticed the concern behind the words. Genuine concern. Not obligation. not strategy. Before he could respond, another notification lit up Ronan's screen. Ethan caught a glimpse of the message. Only a few words. Target approaching schedule. Move before disclosure. Ronan's face went pale. For the first time since meeting him, Ethan saw real fear in his eyes. And suddenly, he realized whatever secret was coming had nothing to do with money, status, or business. It had something to do with him. The next morning began with a feeling Ethan could not explain. It sat heavy in his chest from the moment he opened his eyes. Maybe it was the fear he had seen in Ronan's expression. Maybe it was the strange message on his phone. Either way, something felt wrong. By noon, he discovered exactly how wrong. The entire campus had been summoned to the annual Founders Gala announcement in the main assembly hall. Hundreds of students filled the room. Faculty members lined the walls. Large screens glowed above the stage. Ethan almost skipped it, but attendance was mandatory. He slipped into a seat near the back and immediately noticed the atmosphere. People were whispering. Again. Phones were out. Again. A familiar sense of dread settled into his stomach. Then the lights dimmed. A senior administrator stepped onto the stage. Before he could begin speaking, every screen in the auditorium flickered. The presentation disappeared. A different image appeared instead. Gasps spread through the room. Ethan froze. His own face stared back at him from the giant screens. Another image followed. Then another. Photos of him standing beside Ronan. Sitting with Ronan. Entering Kingsley House. Leaving the library. The audience erupted into murmurs. Ethan felt all the blood drain from his face. Then a document appeared. At the top, bold letters read Private Agreement. Beneath it was what looked like a contract. A contract supposedly signed by Ethan. The terms were horrifying. In exchange for financial benefits and social advancement, Ethan would publicly maintain a close relationship with Ronan Kingsley. The document included screenshots of messages discussing influence, reputation, and access to elite circles. None of it was real. Ethan knew it instantly. The messages had been altered. The contract was fake. But from the audience, it looked convincing. Very convincing. Laughter spread through parts of the hall. Others simply stared. Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. A voice rose from somewhere near the front. So the rumors were true. Another followed. He used him. I knew it. Unbelievable. Ethan stood abruptly. That is not real. His voice sounded small compared to the crowd. Nobody listened. More screenshots appeared. More fabricated conversations. More carefully edited images designed to tell a story. Every piece pointed toward the same conclusion. Ethan Carter had manipulated Ronan Kingsley for personal gain. The cruelty of it left him speechless. Someone had planned this carefully. Every detail had been designed to destroy his reputation. Then Ethan noticed something worse. Ronan was standing near the side of the stage. He had arrived only moments earlier. Their eyes met across the crowded auditorium. Relief flooded Ethan's chest. Ronan would stop this. Ronan knew it was fake. Ronan knew the truth. Except Ronan did not move. He stood completely still, silent, watching. 1 second passed. Then another. Then another. The silence felt endless. Ethan's hope began to crack. Around him, students turned to look at Ronan. Waiting. Everyone wanted to know whether the most powerful student at Blackthorn Academy would defend him. Ronan said nothing. Ethan felt his stomach twist painfully. The room suddenly seemed much larger. Much colder. Maybe this was it. Maybe Ronan had finally decided the situation was not worth saving. Maybe all those warnings and promises had limits after all. The thought hurt far more than Ethan wanted to admit. The administrator on stage looked overwhelmed. Faculty members whispered among themselves. Students openly stared. Ethan wanted to disappear. Then someone spoke from the front row. Trevor Whitmore. Looks like the scholarship kid got caught. Several people laughed. Ethan looked down. He hated how helpless he felt. Hated how everyone seemed so willing to believe the worst about him. The silence stretched one final second. Then Ronan started walking. Not quickly, not dramatically, just calmly, deliberately. The room fell quiet again. Every eye followed him. Ronan climbed the stage steps and approached the control booth. A technician attempted to explain something. Ronan said a few quiet words. The technician immediately stepped aside. Seconds later, the screens changed. The fake contract vanished. The altered messages disappeared. New files appeared instead. Security reports. Digital timestamps. Forensic analysis. Evidence. Lots of evidence. Ronan's voice carried through the silent hall. Every document shown today was fabricated. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The messages were edited. The signatures were forged. The photographs were manipulated. His gaze swept across the audience. Calm, cold, absolute. Anyone responsible will be identified. Trevor's confidence evaporated instantly. Murmurs spread through the crowd once again. This time, they sounded very different. Ronan looked directly at Ethan. He did nothing wrong. For simple words. Yet they changed everything. The audience fell silent. Ethan stared back, unable to speak. For a brief moment, the rest of the room disappeared. Only Ronan remained. Then another screen lit up unexpectedly. A file nobody had loaded. A single photograph appeared. An old photograph. Years old. Two families standing together. One of them was unmistakably Ethan's family. The other was the Kingsley family. And before anyone could stop it, a caption appeared beneath the image. They were connected long before Blackthorn. The entire auditorium gasped. Ronan's expression changed instantly, because whatever secret had just been revealed was the one he had been trying to hide all along. The auditorium remained frozen in stunned silence. The old photograph still glowed across the massive screens above the stage. Ethan could barely process what he was seeing. There he was as a child, standing beside his mother. Beside them stood a younger version of Ronan and his family. The image looked ordinary. A summer afternoon. Smiles. Sunlight. Yet judging by the reactions spreading through the room, it was anything but ordinary. Students whispered. Faculty exchanged confused looks. Reporters covering the event began typing. Furiously, Ethan stared at the screen. He had never seen that photograph before. Not once in his life. Then he looked at Ronan. The expression on Ronan's face told him everything. This was the secret. The one Ronan had spent weeks trying to protect. The one people were willing to destroy reputations to uncover. A voice suddenly echoed from the back of the auditorium. Show them the rest. Several heads turned. One of the suited men stepped forward from the crowd. Ethan recognized him immediately. The same stranger from the library. The same man from Kingsley House. The man smiled coldly. They deserve the truth. More files appeared on the screens. Internal emails. Corporate documents. Fragments of information carefully arranged to create a story. According to the files, Ethan's family had once been connected to a major Kingsley business project years earlier. The documents suggested financial disputes, missing records, and hidden agreements. None of it made complete sense, but the implication was obvious. Someone wanted the audience to believe Ethan's family had somehow benefited from the Kingsleys, and that Ethan had used that connection to get close to Ronan now. Gasps spread through the room again. Ethan felt sick. The crowd was already starting to decide what they believed. The stranger smiled. Looks like the scholarship student was never as innocent as everyone thought. Ronan stepped forward. Enough. The single word cut through the room like a blade. The stranger folded his arms. You still intend to defend him? I intend to tell the truth. Ronan turned toward the giant screens. Then something unexpected happened. More screens activated around the auditorium. Additional projectors lit up. The entire stage transformed into a wall of information. Ethan blinked in surprise. Ronan had prepared for this. Every conversation stopped. Every eye locked onto the stage. Ronan pressed a remote into the hand of one of the administrators. Display file 27. Seconds later, a new document appeared. Then another. Then another. Original records. Verified records. Audit reports. Legal findings. Each one carefully authenticated. Each one destroying the false. Narrative piece by piece. The room grew quieter with every page. Ronan's voice remained calm. Controlled. Certain. 5 years ago, members of my family's executive board concealed information during an internal investigation. Another file appeared. Those actions had consequences for multiple families. Another file followed, including Ethan's. Murmurs swept through the audience. Ethan felt his heart stop. Ronan looked directly at him before continuing. His family did not benefit from what happened. The next document appeared. They suffered because of it. Silence. Absolute silence. The stranger's confidence vanished. For the first time, he looked nervous. Ronan continued. My family spent years searching for the people affected by those decisions. A photograph appeared. The same photograph from childhood. This time accompanied by a date and supporting records. That is why I recognized Ethan immediately. Ethan stared at the screen. The truth unfolded before him piece by piece. Ronan had known who he was from the very beginning. Not because Ethan had manipulated anything. Not because of some secret plan. Because Ronan had been trying to correct a wrong connected to their families for years. The stranger took a step forward. You are making a mistake. Ronan finally looked at him. No, his voice remained steady. The mistake was believing I would stay silent. More evidence appeared. Security logs, communication records, digital forensic reports. One by one, they exposed the entire scheme. The fake contract, the altered messages, the hacked displays. Every piece traced back to individuals connected to the same executive faction that had been hiding the truth for years. The audience watched in stunned disbelief. Faculty members exchanged shocked looks. Administrators began making urgent phone calls. The stranger's face turned pale. The story had completely reversed. Then Ronan did something nobody expected. He stepped away from the evidence, away from the screens, away from the scandal. He walked directly toward Ethan. Hundreds of people watched. Cameras followed every movement. Ethan's pulse hammered in his chest. Ronan stopped beside him, close enough that only Ethan could hear his next breath. Then Ronan faced the audience. At the beginning, I stayed close to Ethan because I believed it was my responsibility. The confession echoed through the silent hall. I thought I was protecting someone who had been hurt by my family's mistakes. Ethan looked up slowly. Ronan's gaze never left the crowd. Some people called it an arrangement. A small pause. Maybe at first it was. The room held its breath. Then Ronan looked directly at Ethan. Every wall he usually carried seemed to disappear. It is not anymore. The words landed like a wave. Soft. Simple. Completely honest. Ronan turned back toward the audience. You can question me. His voice grew firmer. You can question my decisions. You can question my family's history. Another pause. But you will not question Ethan Carter's character. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Because if there is one person in this room who has never used anyone for personal gain, it is him. Ethan felt his vision blur slightly. The crowd remained silent. Not because they were afraid. Because there was nothing left to argue. The truth stood plainly before them. And for the first time since arriving at Blackthorn Academy, Ethan realized something undeniable. Ronan was no longer protecting him out of obligation. He was choosing him. Publicly. Completely. In front of everyone. The silence that followed felt different from every other silence Ethan had experienced at Blackthorn Academy. For the first time, it was not filled with judgment or suspicion. It was filled with understanding. The truth had finally surfaced. One by one, students began looking away from the screens and toward him. The whispers were gone. The accusations were gone. Even the reporters seemed more interested in the evidence than the rumors now. Beside him, Ronan remained calm, but Ethan could see the tension slowly leaving his shoulders. The battle was over. The administrators quickly ended the assembly and promised a formal investigation into everyone involved in the scheme. Faculty members escorted several individuals away for questioning. The crowd gradually dispersed, leaving behind only scattered conversations and the fading glow of the giant screens. Ethan stood frozen for a moment, unsure what to do next. Then he felt someone gently touch his sleeve. "Ronan, come with me," he said quietly. Ethan nodded. Neither spoke as they left the auditorium together. Outside, the late afternoon sky stretched across campus in shades of gold and pale blue. The storm clouds from earlier in the week had disappeared completely. Students watched them pass, but this time the attention felt different. Nobody laughed. Nobody whispered. Some even nodded respectfully. It was strange. For months, Ethan had wanted nothing more than to disappear. Now, for the first time, he did not feel the need to hide. They walked toward the lake at the edge of campus. The water reflected the evening light like polished glass. A gentle breeze stirred the trees lining the shore. Eventually, they stopped near a quiet wooden dock. The same place Ethan often came when he needed to think. For a while, neither of them spoke. The peaceful silence felt earned. Finally, Ethan looked at Ronan. "You knew all along." Ronan nodded. "Most of it. You recognized my family from the beginning." "Yes." Ethan exhaled slowly. "I spent weeks thinking you were hiding things because you did not trust me." Ronan looked down at the water. "I was hiding things because I was afraid." Ethan blinked. Fear was not a word he associated with Ronan Kingsley. Afraid of what? Ronan laughed softly. "You really want the honest answer?" "Yes." Ronan turned toward him. The confidence that usually defined him seemed absent now. What remained felt more real. "I was afraid you would leave." Ethan stared. Ronan continued before he could respond. "Every important relationship in my life has come with conditions. Expectations. Contracts. Obligations." His voice remained calm. "You were the first person who treated me like a normal human being." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. "I yelled at you." "Exactly." A smile finally appeared. Small. Genuine. It was refreshing. Ethan laughed despite himself. The sound echoed softly across the water. For a moment, everything felt simple. Then Ronan reached into his jacket pocket and removed a folded document. Ethan immediately narrowed his eyes. Please tell me that is not another contract. Technically it is. Ethan groaned. Ronan, just look. Ronan handed it over. Ethan unfolded the paper. The title made him laugh immediately. Honest agreement. Below it were only 3 short points. No secrets. No assumptions. No walking away without talking first. Ethan read the page twice before looking up. This is ridiculous. Probably. Did you actually type this? I had help. From lawyers? No. Ronan looked almost embarrassed. From the internet. Ethan laughed so hard he nearly dropped the paper. Weeks ago, he would never have believed the most intimidating person on campus spent time searching relationship advice online. Somehow that made the moment even more meaningful. So what happens now? Ethan asked. Ronan considered the question carefully. Then he looked out across the lake. The board still wants me to take over the company eventually. I figured. The investigation will take months. Probably. And there will still be reporters. Definitely. Ronan nodded. Sounds complicated. Ethan folded the agreement and slipped it into his backpack. Good thing I am getting used to complicated. Their eyes met. No audience. No cameras. No rumors. Just 2 people standing beside a quiet lake at sunset. This time there were no secrets left between them. Ronan held out his hand. Not as a business deal. Not as an obligation. Just a choice. Ethan smiled and took it. Together they began walking back toward campus as the last light of day settled across the water behind them. For the first time since arriving at Blackthorn Academy, Ethan no longer felt like he was chasing a future alone, because whatever came next, they had finally chosen it together.